Hello.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good.
That's better. The connection of my so I have a there's a proprietary cable, or there's a proprietary connector on the mic that I have, and the cable goes to USB-A, and I have a USB-A to C, just a little tiny, it's not even a dongle, it's just a converter, and I assume it's passive, just changing up the USB, or allowing the USB-A to pass through to a C connector.
I assume the hum is from bumping it or something.
I bumped it and then it stayed, and so I just reseated everything.
Gotcha. I'm trying a slightly different setup tonight just to test out my other mic at the same time. So I have the mic that I've been using hooked up, and then I have the Samson USB mic hooked up below it just to see what kind of audio I get from it.
Cool. I have changed my setup so that I am intentional about speaking directly into my microphone so that I don't have you doing crazy work on the post production part of the podcast.
Yeah, the last week's recordings, there were a number of sections where I tried to kind of boost segments and level out as much as I could, but I know some of it was still just kind of up and down.
Yeah, I apologize. I apologize to you. I apologize to the folks that are listening. So hopefully I've got that sorted out today.
Well, the way I see it, we get at least 20 episodes before we're supposed to have fairly consistent, audio streams.
That's fair. That's fair.
Everything prior to that is trial and error and learning what affects what.
Yeah. So feedback, or no, follow-up.
Yes, we actually have some.
Not only do we have some, I did the follow-up work. I looked up
all of it or only partial?
What do you mean? What do you mean partial?
So are you talking about follow-up for like everything or follow-up just from the last episode?
Oh, just from the last episode.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we hadn't gone crazy or anything.
Oh, no. I would have put that you would have known. You'd have seen it in the list. So, in the last episode, I was talking about Swiss Army knives and Victorinox, and they have a logo on the Swiss Army knife, and then there's a second Swiss Army knife logo that I've seen. The Victorinox logo looks like a shield. I think that's the best way I could describe it. And the other one, a Wenger Swiss Army knife, looks like a square with rounded edges. Or, no, a square with rounded corners. And I think even like the sides are rounded, so... or curved. The sides are curved, even though it still looks like a square, but with not straight edges and not corners.
So more like a round rect.
Is that the term?
I was just thinking about the Big Sur icons.
Oh God, yes. But I would say even the, we were talking about Big Sur, and I have this like need to upgrade to it, and I can't think of a single thing that a single feature that I really, really want, that I feel compelling enough to actually do the upgrade. And I can give you a list of all the things that I don't want that come with it. Yet I feel compelled to do the upgrade because it's out there. I think it's bothering me more that I want to upgrade than I actually want to upgrade.
I understand. The only reason that I want to upgrade is just to get rid of a couple of app updates that won't install because they're specific for Big Sur, but I still see them even though I'm not running Big Sur.
That's really annoying.
Well, and it's Apple's apps. It's Remote Desktop and I think GarageBand.
Interesting. I don't have. Yeah, I got the Remote Desktop. You can't update this, and I got I only have GarageBand on my computer. That's why. But yeah, I thought that system preferences would be more annoying about updates, but I've seen like the one update to Big Sur, and it sits there, and there's that notification. But that doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really get in the way. And then every once in a while, I was like, "You got an update?" And I was like, "Oh, come on! I don't want to update to Big Sur." And it turns out it's not Big Sur. It's something. It's been like a security update, and I think another update that came recently, as well as a Safari update. Because I'm on the latest version of Safari, so like I don't need to go to Big Sur to get the benefits of Safari 14.
Yeah, I noticed those today and did those earlier this afternoon just to see if anything would break. And really the only thing that I kind of want from Big Sur is the unified messages app. Yeah,
that, and I think we talked about that, and I also talked about the AirPods switching. It's supposed to be more seamless switching. I'm not sure exactly how it is done, but those are the only two, and maybe Time Machine's supposed to be better. But again, it's not enough for me to like actually do anything about it.
Yeah, I think the only reason I even really notice it at the moment is because I have that M1 Mini, which of course is running Big Sur. And so every time I connect to it via remote desktop, it's represented to me, right in my face that, hey, there's a different version of the OS you're not running.
See, I have the similar thing. I have my Mac Mini server running Big Sur, and every time I connect to it through remote desktop, it's like, oh yeah, that's why I didn't want to do it. So every time I get the hankering to do the update, I go log into my Mac Mini, and it's actually getting the benefits of the Time Machine updates, as far as I know.
So I had two pieces of follow-up that I added in as well. One, I had mentioned that I wasn't sure about the metallurgical term for applying a treatment to a blade.
Yeah.
And everything I came across was basically referring to it as a treatment or a coating, so I don't think there's a separate metallurgical term for it for that type of process. I think when you're actually talking about metallurgy, it's more what you're doing to the metal during the production of the metal, so the alloy or things of that nature, not the application of something else to it post-forging.
So is this the when you have a black blade, or is this the Damascus blade?
This would be the black blade, the treatment or powder coating or whatever it is that's actually being applied.
Yeah. I've heard that term referred to as bluing. And I've heard it in reference to firearms as well.
Yeah, firearms, I've certainly heard the term. I guess it makes sense that it would be probably a similar process to the blade.
Yeah, I feel like the only knife that I have with a black blade is the K-bar, and I feel like bluing might be like what you would do on your own. But I don't know I wouldn't expect it's the same treatment that you would get from the factory.
I know at least on the firearm side, it is typically something you would get from the factory, or you could send to a specialized shop and have them do it as well.
So I didn't finish my follow-up on Swiss Army knives.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We got down a rabbit hole regarding Mac OS software. Because you said I was saying that there are two Swiss Army knives, Victorinox and Wenger, and Wenger is the one with the logo the rounded the icons like Big Sur. That's how we got. Yeah, that's how we got
the lovable round direct that everything has gone to.
Oh God. Anyway, in 1908. And that's how I would say 1908, because I don't want to say 1908 because that's a 0 and not an O. In 1908, the Swiss government split the contract between Victorinox and Wenger for the Swiss Army knife. And half of the orders went to Victorinox and half of the orders went to Wenger. And by mutual agreement, Wenger advertised as the genuine Swiss Army knife, and Victorinox used the slogan, the original Swiss Army knife.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then in 2005, Victorinox acquired Wenger.
I have to go back to this 1908 thing.
Yeah.
So officially, wouldn't it be 1908?
You could say 1908, like you could say 1913, but we just say 1913 if you were going to refer to the, year 1913. So you can also do it for like 1908, 1901, 1902, 1903. It's just not that. It's acceptable. I've heard it used before. It's just not common.
The only thing I picture every time is someone trying to think of it as 191 or 198 instead of having that zero in between.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I do where it's what I like and it's atypical. And so I compensate for that in ways. So if I would, so like when I just said 1908, I like explained it just so that I could say it and explain it. But if we were talking just you and me, I might say it and just expect for you to like, or just not, sometimes people might just not even notice it. I don't know. I may do it without any explanation at all. And then sometimes I might just say 1908 just to not have to, like, because it's more important to be understood and to communicate than to be correct or, because like it's even though it's acceptable to say 1908, it's technically incorrect because that's a zero. But it's more important to communicate effectively than to be correct.
Is that technically incorrect, though? Just because it's a zero instead of an O, 1908 is the generally accepted shorthand for 1908.
Yeah. No. Just because, it's accepted. It's accepted the point. I guess when I say correct, it would probably be considered incorrect formally.
Yeah, probably.
But it's like there's a whole bunch of things that are formally incorrect that we all accept and understand and communicate with one another. So another one that I do that's like different is like I like to do my date format day, month, year. And so if I'm going to write something day, month, year, and I know that it's like not if it's before the 13th day of the month, I'll write like 4 days ago, I would have written 11 DEC 2020.
See, I write my dates like that most of the time anyway. And I don't really know why, other than at some point I found it novel and then decided I liked writing it that way. I don't think there was anything that just jumped out at me as far as writing it that particular way. Though it is, commonly accepted most everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to me in 8th grade, but that's when I started doing day, month, year because I saw it somewhere and I thought, that makes sense. Because it's like you go from month, day, year, it's like it feels like it's out of order. And day, month, year made sense to me. So I started doing it that way. And then I got misunderstood a lot and I was like, oh, and I had to compensate for that. I also, in the 8th grade, started putting a slash in my 7s and Zs. And sometime in college, I started putting a slash in my zeros because, no, it was actually working for Apple. I put a slash in my zeros when I had to write them down because of serial numbers. And there's something else. Sometime in my 20s, I also started using the 24-hour time format.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever used the 24-hour time format other than like trying to coordinate something in a group, like back in Scouts or something, where it was just easier. I do tend to write my 8s as 2 circles instead of one continuous looped line.
Like a figure 8?
For lack of better phrasing, yeah. And then my 5s tend to look more like an S, and my 2s are reversed like that, where they don't necessarily look like an S, but there's not as sharp a straight line. It's more of almost like a Z for a 2.
Okay.
And so a lot of times I would write Z with a line through it if it were a serial number that had, a 2 or something as well, just to have that distinction because I know how similar they look. But then I would have to intentionally draw the straight lines on the 5 when I did that if it was, mixed use case, so it wouldn't be mistaken as an S.
I can't remember if I do anything else weird like that. I think the 7s and Zs, I just did it because I saw someone else do it and I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I don't think I'm sure multiple times I've added lines to like the 7 and 0 just for the sake of doing so, but I've never consistently done that.
Not only have I done it consistently in the 8th grade, I can remember being in the 8th grade sitting in class and going back in my notebook and correcting my Zs and 7s. Like that I previously wrote that. Like it was the beginning of the school year, but correcting it in the notebook.
That doesn't surprise me. If you're going to do it consistently, make it consistent.
Yeah. So
I had one other piece of follow-up that I dropped in there.
Yeah.
I remember talking about the kind of multifunction tool that I keep in the Jeep, and I went back and looked. There are multiple variants of it out there. The one that I picked up is by a company that I assume it's supposed to be Unbreakxble, but instead of an A, they put an X in between the K and the B, so I don't know how you're truly supposed to pronounce it. But it's the MK1 walking staff, and I put a link just so you can kind of see what I was talking about, where you've got a handful of poles or small segments that you screw together for whatever length you need, and then there are some different adapters that you can attach to the end of the pole. And I mean, it's kind of neat. It's definitely something that I felt like was useful to keep in the Jeep, but it's not something that is light enough that I would consider it a trekking pole or a normal use walking stick.
I think it would be kind of scary to walk around with that as a normal walking stick.
Scary for who? Anybody that I came across?
Yeah. It's intimidating. I think it's all the bumps.
It does have a good heft to it, which I like, but it's also, that's exactly why I wouldn't use it on a long hike, is it would get kind of heavy over time.
Yeah.
But as far as putting it in a pack and having it available as a multifunction tool, sure, it stows pretty well.
How like I'm seeing like the different sizes are 90, so like 3 feet. One of them is a little over 4 feet, and one of them's just under 3.5 feet, or just under 3 feet long, and the longest is just over 4 feet.
Yeah, I went ahead and got the one that's just over 4 feet, just because I assumed, rightly so, that if I just wanted to leave out one of the segments, I could, and it would be the same. But that way, if I needed that extra little bit of like prying or levering power or functionality, I would have access to it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Does it come with all of the blades?
It does.
Oh, cool.
The original advertisement I saw, there's one end that is just kind of a blunt end. And the original advertisement I saw showed someone taking that and hitting a cinder block and breaking the block.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's possible. I mean, it's definitely well constructed. But just the thought of having something that was that robust and available to me if I needed it, especially something that I intended to just leave in a bag in the Jeep in case I needed it with anything that I may encounter, just seemed like a neat tool. Whether I ever actually find a use for it or not is entirely unknown and uncertain at this point. But
I think it's very cool that there's a shovel head accessory and an axe head accessory.
Yeah, those are separate purchase, and I did not purchase those just because I still don't really have a specific use case for it in the first place. But it was unique enough and interesting enough that having a kind of a saw blade and a spearhead available, not that I'm the most survival oriented or wilderness like hunting type, but I felt like in a pinch I could probably leverage those to catch something if I needed to.
If I was Chuck Nolan and I got stranded on a deserted island and I got to choose 5 things, that would be one of the things I'd want, like open up a brand new one of these, that'd be great. And I also noticed that even without the shovel and the axe head, I even noticed that, or I was thinking that if you were to take some superhero's tool, like from a comic, and say, okay, that looks cool, but I need to make a real life one of these that's useful for real people. Because like, as real people, we are not superheroes and we're not vigilantes. How can we make this cool tool but actually make it useful in real life? And I think this is what that would be.
Yeah, it definitely has that feel to it. I think the main piece that kind of made me decide to try it was that I could have, because of the way it's made, you could take one of the handle segments and attach like the saw blade to it, and that alone could be useful. Mm-hmm. And so it was something that, all right, well, let's just say that's the only tool that I ever actually get any use out of. Is it worth the investment? Well, by the time you add the other handle pieces and have something that you could walk with if you needed to support yourself, sure. Especially since it doesn't have to stay in that configuration, and then you have to find this place to put a 3 or 4 foot staff in addition to the tool.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and the cost of it, even like at full price, it is about as much as a good pair of trekking poles would cost. So it's not like overly expensive. I was also going to say that I believe it's pronounced Unbreakxble, and the X is used instead of an A because they're hardcore.
Well, if nothing else, it's a good branding decision.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say, if nothing else, adding an X makes you hardcore. I remember even like the abbreviation for hardcore. I remember hearing the abbreviation for hardcore being HXC. There's no X in hardcore, but you put an X in there because it's more hardcore than not having an X.
It sounds like the same type of mentality that brought birth to CrossFit.
Yeah.
I think that's it for follow-up, unless you had anything else.
That was all I had for follow-up. I was, for my whole life, I thought I was, why are there 2 Swiss Army knives? And it's because there are 2 Swiss Army knives.
It's funny how the simple answers come back over and over and over.
Yeah. So
the topic that we kind of left and pushed out of the previous episodes was locations in general. And I know I struggled a bit trying to figure out what that actually meant. And then you filled out a decent amount in the notes.
Yeah. So
I'm going to kind of turn it over to you to drive this part of the conversation, since I didn't add a whole lot.
So I chose the first one because it's probably the most iconic hike that I've been on. Not probably, definitely the most iconic hike that I've been on. Or at least one that folks would recognize. And we've both actually done this hike separately, but we both know what this is. And so I thought it'd be cool to different perspectives from the same hike. And that was the hiking the Gros Piton in St. Lucia.
Which to this day is still the most difficult hike that I have done.
Oh, 100% for me. Most difficult hike I've ever done. These specs for the hike matches what I've seen on various trails applications, but these are the specs based on like a geo breadcrumb app that I use called Relive. Idea being that every once in a while your phone will drop a breadcrumb to the GPS services to send data back and forth, kind of like Hansel and Gretel. So this was a 3-point. I was gonna say it's a fairly accurate hike, a fairly accurate application for this purpose. So in 3.3 miles, you go up and then down 2,145 feet.
That sounds about right from memory.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I know the guide that we had talked about the elevation changes and everything else, but I don't remember those details off the top of my head.
Yeah, so the actual height of the mountain is 2,618 feet. Actually, almost I think just a few inches shy of 2,619 feet. It's a volcanic mountain, and basically you're doing a rock scramble for 1.5 miles up and then another 1.5 miles down. I remember, and I'll get to this. I'll get to this in a little bit. I remember prior to this hike, the hardest hike I'd ever been on was in Arkansas, and it's basically stairs. It's like if you wanted to go hike the Gros Piton, go get on a Stairmaster and do that for 3 hours, and that's just going up the mountain, and you don't have any of the views from the Stairmaster. So that's what I feel it was, but it's all I think it's all granite, and you're just like stepping up rocks, and it's hot. I mean, I remember carrying, I think I carried 4 liters of water in my backpack. That's all I had. I just was 4 liters, and I used all of that water.
Yeah, I don't think we had. I don't remember us carrying quite that much water. It was close, but that was across 2 of us, and I remember feeling like we should have had more for sure by the time we were done. But we were relatively smart about hydrating prior to the hike and then carrying, what we carried up. So it wasn't too bad. But in retrospect, I definitely would have carried more water.
Yeah, I had enough water, and I'm really glad I did, because on the way down, I felt like I was gonna, I started using the water to, like, the water was still, like, I'm gonna, like, start 7 more sentences. So I remember thinking, especially because it was, well, I was going to say summertime, but it wasn't summertime. It was actually February, but it's summertime all the time there. Like, their climate doesn't change that much. I loved it. But I remember thinking, for how hot it was going to be, I filled up water bottles and I froze them all so that they would be ice and so they'd still be cold. And because it's so warm, it melts. And so it was nice to have cold water. But like on the way down, I was using that cold water like on my head because I was afraid of heat exhaustion. I was getting so hot from all of that. Like I know the hike took a little over 5 hours, but our actual moving time was under 4. I was just under 4 hours, like 3 hours and 45 minutes. And so there's like an hour, you get up at the top and, you hang out for a few minutes and then go back down. But it was the hardest hike I'd ever been on. And I mentioned this hike in Arkansas. It was previously my hardest hike. It wasn't it was basically the same going up steps, same like elevation kind of climb, but it was for a much shorter period of time. And I remember thinking when they were describing the hike of the Gros Piton to us, it's like, here's section, they broke it up into basically quarters, fairly equal length. So the first section was like, it's this hard. And then they said the second section's a little bit harder. The third section's harder than the second. And the fourth section is the hardest. And I remember thinking, maybe they're like the kind of people that, or rather like we went through the first section and I was like, oh no, this is harder. The first section, the easiest section of the hike, is harder than the previous hardest hike I'd ever been on. And every section is supposed to be subsequently harder. And I just remember thinking halfway through the hike, thinking maybe they lied to us and maybe section 3 isn't quite as hard as section 2. Turns out, nope, they didn't lie. They didn't lie at all. They told the truth. Every section is subsequently harder than the next.
And I do find it interesting that the first section I didn't really find difficult at all. I mean, it was challenging, sure, but it felt like what I expected out of the hike, I guess is maybe the better way to put it. It's not that it didn't feel difficult. It's that mentally I was prepared for it and it felt like what I expected. I don't think we were given the same 4-section breakdown. I remember them talking about the first section being what it was, and then there was discussion about a second segment that was definitely harder, but it was significantly shorter, and then the final little summit. So it sounds like our guide broke it up into just 3 sections instead of 4. But I know that last bit, I really wasn't sure I was going to make it to the top. But at that point I refused as well to not make it to the top. It was one of those things where you get that close, and it's like, I don't care if I take 4 steps and stop. I will just take 4 steps and stop and rest, and take 4 steps and stop if I have to. But I will make it to the top of this mountain.
That's how I was. I was like, I'm going to take a few steps and then I'm going to stop. I'll stop for like 20 seconds and go 4 more steps. And like, I felt like I was stopping more than going, and it was, I mean, the top is great. I mean, the views are wonderful, but that was definitely the hardest. Like, it kicked my ass, and I was not expecting it to kick my ass, because a week before, like the weekend before, I went to Ruffner Mountain and was hiking with some friends, and like, it was a piece of cake. Like, there were, there's some hills there, and there were people there that were like, this is not an easy hill. And I'm just like, piece of cake, no problem. Piece of cake, no problem. And then I get there, and I'm just like, what the fuck? I mean, oh no.
Yeah, I remember from the point of the huge mango tree to the summit.
Yes.
Was just slow going. And I don't think I had to stop quite as often as I'm making it out, but it was pretty close. Like, I definitely was moving, a dozen steps or so, and then taking a couple of seconds, and then continuing kind of that pattern. And as we got toward the end, it was, I'm just going to take a couple of steps and wait a second or two, and then take a couple of steps. Like, it was definitely rough at the summit.
Yeah, I definitely stopped. I had to stop a lot. It was tough. I was hard, and I was not fit. I was not fit enough to just go up that mountain. And even the guide. I mean, the guide, like, he wasn't out of breath or anything. He was like, he was a kid in his 20s, and like, this was his job, was going up and down the mountain. And he said he used to do 2 tours a day. Like, so he'd go up and down in a day. And he's like, it's just too much for me to do that. And so I was like, that kind of made me feel a little bit better. But then next day I was hiking, I think it was Rodney Bay, and there's just like a little fort up there, and it's a nice little area. And I met a guy there, and he was just like, he's just like running up the trail like it was nothing. And he had done the Petit Piton, which is it's the second tallest mountain on the island, but the hike is I've heard it's a harder hike. And he was like, yeah, it was great. And I was like, yeah, I can understand. I think it was great too if I was that fit.
Yeah, we had some locals try to talk us into doing Petit Piton, and it is more steep than Gros Piton, and the last segment is basically just rock climbing to the top. My understanding is that there's a trail on one side, but it's longer, and most of the guides try to avoid that, and instead want you to climb on the shorter, more direct path.
Yeah. I know, like, part of it they have ropes. Like, there's they've secured ropes there for everyone to use to go up it. So, if I'm ever back on that island, I'd want to be able to do that climb.
Yeah, I would certainly want to try it, especially since I know what to expect out of Gros Piton.
Yeah.
But I would want to make sure that I had a guide that was... I don't really know the best way to put it. I would want a guide that's actually paid to be a guide, and not one of the dozen or so locals that tried to get us to hire them to take us up there.
So for the Gros Piton, did you have a guide?
Yeah, we there's a little welcome center or something at the base, and through the resort where we stayed, we actually made reservations with the guides that work out of that facility. Okay,
I gotcha. I read that the Gros Piton hike is something that you could just go do. And so I thought, okay, we'll go do it. And we get there, and they're like, "Oh, you got to you got to pay for a guide." And I was like, "No, I'm pretty sure we can just go climb it." And they're like, "No, you got to go pay for a guide." And I was like, "Okay." And I'm really glad that we did. One, supporting local economy and so forth, but also like the guide was great. Like he was fun to talk to. He was encouraging, and he was like, let's keep going. And he was real about it. Like, it's like, this is going to be harder. This is not, each section that I talked about is going to be harder. And then he was cool about, go at your own pace. I'm here for you, that kind of thing. And you get to the top. He's like, hangs out there. Whenever you're ready to get down, you go down, and it was a good. I felt like it was a good experience. Did you have a beer at the top of the mountain?
I did not. We decided instead we would have celebrations back at the villa or whatever you want to call where we stayed. I guess technically it would be a villa. So if you are heading toward Soufrière from Gros Piton, along that road, along the coastline, the villas that we stayed in were maybe a mile outside the city, but they were up a little bit in elevation, so you could see, of course, the water and all down below. But from the villas, we had a perfect, like, up front, in-your-face view of Gros Piton.
Oh, that's good.
And so with that location, we decided, all right, we'll do the hike, and that'll be the only thing we do that day, and then we'll go back to the villa and lounge in the pool and have drinks and just enjoy the view.
Where did you stay?
I was trying to remember. It was something estates. I'd have to look it up.
Well, I will say...
I'll look it up while you talk.
Okay. I was going to say, I went... Beck and I went all over the island. And there's some like gorgeous, like if you go to the very north of the island, there's some really gorgeous beaches. And if you go, I remember going to one place, and I'd actually love to stay at this place. It was Sugar Beach Resort, and it's nestled in between both of the pitons on the beach. So when you go down to their outdoor restaurant area, you've got one piton to your left, one piton to your right, and that was pretty cool. I think the Gros is to the left and the Petit is to the right when facing the ocean.
Yeah.
I remember hanging a hammock down there, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Stonefield Estate Villa Resort is what was on the sign.
The other...
go ahead. I'm going to send you a quick picture of the view sitting in the hammock at the estate.
The other place...
It's going to take a minute, so go ahead.
Yeah. I would say that was a cool little beach. But there's a gym down there called Ballenbush Estate. They have like this sort of Victorian-looking house. And I guess there used to be a sugar plantation there. There's some sort of mill there, and I mean it's been unused for decades, maybe even a century, and it was the mill is still like the mill is still there, or some of the machinery is still there, and the jungle is taking over what is left, and down there is like the most gorgeous black beach I've ever seen. Most gorgeous beach I've ever seen, and it's got black sand, like a true black sand beach. It was lovely, and there was nobody there. It was so cool. Those pictures in your hammock are amazing.
Yeah, we got very lucky with where we chose to stay. I will say on a repeat trip, I would like to stay on the other side of Soufrière and on Chastenay, I think is what it was.
Yeah, I went out there.
Yeah, and really only because of the beach. Like for us, we had to hop in a vehicle and drive down a bit to go to the beach, or go across to the other side of Soufrière to go to the beach at Chastenay. And so the accessibility of the beach would be nice to have without having to get in a vehicle and drive. But we also had a rental, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. If I was going to go back, I'd want to stay, like I'd want to actually split my time in 3 different places. One at Ballenbush, one at Sugar Beach, and one at a place called Crystals. And Crystals was up in the mountains, and it has one of the most gorgeous views I've ever seen in my life. I took a picture and then had that picture turned into, or had that picture printed on canvas, and it's so pretty.
I think we've spent a lot of time just talking about St. Lucia at this point. One other piece that I'll add, though, we didn't make our way all the way up to Castries, and so part of me would also like to visit further up on the northern end of the island.
So I was in Castries for a little bit, and it's a cool little town. I wouldn't spend a lot of time in Castries if I was there, and even the beaches near Castries. I mean, they're as good as the Gulf of the Florida Panhandle, but if you go just a little bit farther north, beyond Castries, there's some really nice beaches up there.
Yeah, it'd be the kind of thing that we would have to do a little bit of looking. In general, we've kind of agreed on principle, I guess, for lack of anything else, that if the opportunity arises, sure, we would love to go back. It was great, but it's not on the list of places that I definitely need to go again.
Yeah. So I guess I'll move on to the rest of my list. And these are just some locations that I've been to for hiking, camping, and so forth. And another one, it's a little gym in our backyard, the Sipsey Wilderness. It's part of Bankhead National Forest. And it's interesting. I was scrolling through Instagram today, and I saw a picture, and it was like, "Oh, that's a gorgeous waterfall." And then I saw below it, it's like it was put out by a company that makes backpacks, or they were featuring the picture because somebody took the picture wearing their backpack, and lo and behold, it was Sipsey Wilderness, and so it's a good little spot. The trails there are fairly easy, not a lot of ups and downs, especially compared to the Piton. But it is got some tight squeezes. You're not like going in caves, but you're like kind of going through these rock formations that kind of feel like a cave. I'm not sure what to call it. I think colloquially we just say we're going through the cave, but it's not actually a cave. Unless I don't quite know the definition of a cave. But it's a great little spot. There's a lot of waterfalls, a lot of overhangs where you can like actually camp underneath these overhangs. And I got a friend who goes and camps there, doesn't take a tent because even if it's raining, there's a fair amount of protection from the weather. And it's kind of one of those places where it's like, when I went there for the first time, I was like, I didn't know that there was a place like this in Alabama that was this beautiful. It was a really cool spot. The only thing that you have to really be prepared for is a lot of stream crossings.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard multiple people mention Bankhead, but I still have not made my way out there.
So the second good hike that I went on, and this is another backyard gym for us, and that is... out in Cheehaw Wilderness is the Skyway Loop, and it's an 18-mile loop that goes around near the tallest peak in Alabama, which is it's a solid almost just over 2,400 feet. It's like one of those things where if you live somewhere in Alabama and then you go to Cheehaw, it's like, okay, that's a mountain. And then if you go up to Gatlinburg, it's like, oh, look, mountains. Because, I mean, the Appalachians are no joke. I know a friend of mine, he did a fairly lengthy portion of the Appalachian Trail. Actually, another friend of mine did a whole through hike. And it's like, it's a lot of ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster. You go up and down and up and down and up and down. Whereas like the Pacific Crest Trail is a lot of ridge walking. So you go up and you're on a ridge, and you go down. You know, it's different. And so I just remember like going out to Cheehaw, and it's like, if you want to see a mountain view in Alabama, that's where you're gonna see, that's the best way. That's the best place to go. And on the Skyway Loop, part of the Pinhoti Trail goes through the Skyway Loop. It's actually a series of there's various trails that ended up getting connected together, and it creates a loop around the Cheehaw Wilderness. And it's a really nice part of Alabama. It's got it's nice because there's a lot of water, so you don't have to carry much water. You just need to take a filter, and there's a lot of water sources most of the year. Even like on some of the driest months, you are unlikely to have issues finding water. The falls may not, the waterfalls that are around there may not have any water in them if it's really dry, but most of the creeks have water. I've never been there when there wasn't water, but it's a great little 18-mile loop. It's something you can knock out in a weekend. You can go do it on Saturday, Sunday. If someone's relatively new to hiking, I would plan 3 days for that loop. Or if you haven't been hiking in a while, I'd plan 3 days for it. My buddy and I did it in 2 days, and it was good. It was good. I was just say like I wanted to, go sit in a hot tub after the second day. There's a lot of technical aspects to the hike. There's a section where you're going through a rock garden, and you're just like going from boulder to boulder. There's just no real trail. There's no real trail, and you're just like having to guide through this rock garden. And that to me was the hardest part of it. The direction of the loop that we went, I think we went a clockwise direction from a section where we started. There's a couple of trailheads. One of them is a trailhead called Adams Gap, and we did, I think, a clockwise loop. And the last part of the hike on the second day was rib ridges. You go up like 100, 150 feet, and then you go down. And you go up and down. That I had no problems with. Going over the rocks, man, that was like mentally taxing. Like mentally and physically taxing, because I'm just like, all I see are rocks, and all I'm going over is, stepping on rocks. And it was a wet weekend, like it was rainy. And so on top of like, just trying to hike on rocks, it's also wet, and slipping is kind of a thing that you don't want to do.
Were these all, when you're talking about it being rocks, all relatively large, or was it just all different sizes and you had to worry about foot placement as well? So
thankfully they were fairly large, but they were anywhere between like a large pumpkin in size to like something you might start calling a small boulder. So where you might be taking 2 steps on the rock.
So definitely enough smaller pieces that you had to also be concerned about whether your weight would cause it to shift.
Yes, there was a lot. That's probably the part that's like most mentally taxing, is like you got to go slow because you don't know if the rock is going to wiggle when you step on it. And it's just a lot of care that you have to take for that.
Yeah, the only reason I wanted to clarify is because depending on where you go, we talked about Moss Rock a little bit previously. Mm-hmm. And like sections like that, there's plenty of rock, but it's all like rock formation. It's not necessarily individual rocks where you're worried about the rocks moving on you.
Right.
So what you're describing reminds me more of some of the sections of trail that I've encountered around the Palisades. I'm not sure if you've ever actually been there either. I don't remember exactly where it is now. It's north of us, probably an hour. I'll look it up.
I know I've... So, is it Palisades Park, like in Blount County?
Sounds right. I've got to look it up because I've only been once. Yeah, it is Palisades Park in Blount County.
Okay. I've heard of something else being called the Palisades, and I'd always heard that as Palisades Park, and I grew up there. So I'm quite familiar with Palisades Park.
Yeah, there were, I've only been once, but there were sections there where it's not that it was overly rocky, it's that while you're walking around the rock formations, there was a lot of loose rock that you had to be concerned about your foot slipping on.
Yeah, so it's funny. It's like as a teenager, I used to go there fairly often, and there's there's like a 90-foot cliff there, and it was very popular for rappelling at the time. I never did that. I never got a chance to do that, but I remember a section of the cliff had separated from the main part, the main cliff. So you have like this, you have this cliff, and at its farthest drop, there's a 90-foot drop, and at least that's what I was told. I didn't ever measure it. I just remember in my head I have 90 feet. But it's if you fall, you're probably going to die, kind of thing. And there's a section that's separated from it, so it's on its far side from the main land. It's that big drop in between it where it has separated from the cliff. I don't know, it drops maybe 15, 20 feet into the rock. And I used to, the space in between where it separated is maybe 4 feet. And I used to jump back and forth between that section and the main part. And I remember going there in my 20s and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I used to jump from here to there. Because like if you just get it wrong, if you slip on a leaf, best case scenario, you're in the emergency room.
Yeah. Yeah, my brother and I went up there once, not long after we had both moved to this area, and it was certainly fun to walk around and everything else. And I would say the estimate of 90 feet sounds right, because the just rough estimate of looking at it, it seemed to be, well over 10 times taller than either of us. So even if you lowball it, I'd say 75 feet. But the way the formation is, like you would have to be lucky to fall and survive.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you might end up being paraplegic, quadriplegic if you survived. I mean, definitely broken legs. I mean, but more than likely, I think you would die.
I didn't mean to derail it from the rest of the conversation about the topics you pointed out, though.
Oh, no. Yeah, there was a couple other places that like kind of stick out to me as places I like. The big Escambia Creek. So it's not so much hiking, but it's a place that I've done some paddling. Actually, the only times I've paddled it have been in the winter, and it was for a camping trip. It's like, paddle like 7 miles and we started, well, it's cool. Whew. It's a pretty cool location because the spot where I paddled with some friends is in Flomaton, Alabama. It's right on the Florida state line, and it's on a reservation that is owned and managed by the Magnolia Creek Indians. And man, I hate when I say Indians. Anyway, it's managed by the Magnolia Creek. And so there's this gorgeous clear water river that flows through South Alabama, and you can go paddle. And the thing that I loved about this river is that we were able to camp on this massive sandbar. So it's probably like 10 acres. It's huge. And, you paddle. We paddled maybe somewhere between 5 and 7 miles. And you come upon this sandbar. And you can set up, we set up camp there. We had like a bonfire. So it's kind of like having a beach bonfire, except for there's the river and not the ocean. The forest that surrounds the river is full of red cedar trees, and so that's lovely. I love the way cedar trees look, and I love the way they smell. And it's this beautiful little spot that I've gone to a couple of times, and I'll keep going back to it because it's really sort of magical, I think, and a lot of fun. And both times that I've gone, it's been on one of those January days that's unseasonably warm, where like it's sunny and the highs in the mid 60s, and it's just like a great little camping trip. So I have very fond memories of the Big Escambia Creek. I actually would like to paddle it in the summer while it's like nice and hot and can swim in it. So
certainly sounds like a good trip.
Yeah, every time I show people pictures from that, they're like, "Oh, that's so cool." And it's like one of those ones. It's like you can see a picture of it, and you're like, "Oh, I want to go there." Like it's right here. It's not that far away. We could do a little weekend trip there, and it's really great. Unfortunately, it's been closed all year because of the pandemic. They have just said, we don't want to risk anything. We don't want to risk anyone getting sick, and we don't want to risk any of our people getting sick. So they just closed the whole thing down all summer long. Actually, all year long, rather.
Yeah, I can see where that can kind of make sense especially if you you anticipate a high volume of traffic. Especially kind of as we've noted that outdoor activities have spiked over the course of the year as well. And so I could see, if you're concerned about people thinking it's a safe activity and a flood of people coming, that might be an issue.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's like, we're not going to participate in folks being potentially risky, like overly risky. And I respect that. I think it's been a little bit sad for me because like there's been literally the weekend that everything shut down was a trip some friends and I had planned to actually paddle it, and it was just like that week is like, yeah, we're shut, everything shut down. And so we missed out on that, and I even reached out to my contact that I have there to see if I could paddle in September, and she was like, "No, we're probably going to be closed for the rest of the year." So maybe this spring things will be better for a site like that. But at the end of the day, you can't trust some people. Actually, there's a lot of people you can't trust to do the right thing, and so they closed it down.
Yeah, I can certainly, even though it sucks, I can certainly be on board with that kind of decision.
Yeah. I mean, this whole year sucks. So actually, there's a lot of good things that came out of this year, but for all intents and purposes, this year, 2020 sucked. But let's try to make it not suck as much as it could.
Yeah, looking back, there's not a huge negative impact to my normal activities for the year, other than we didn't take any family trip anywhere. And we normally at least try to do one, if not two a year. But I'm okay with that being the worst ramification. We got off easy is what it comes down to so far, right?
Yeah.
If that's the worst that we've had to deal with.
100% agree.
I am looking forward to making my way back to Florida next year, hopefully. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing something next year where I don't feel like I'm going to... Did I do a thing that I'm going to think about for the next 2 weeks to see if I got sick, So,
yeah.
Just some semblance of what life used to be like. I don't even mind, like, hey, you got a vaccine, but you still got to wear a mask when you're out. I don't mind that at all. Like, do I like wearing a mask? Not really. I don't know anyone that likes it. Maybe my kids like it sometimes because they have cute little masks. But wearing a mask is one of the easiest things that you can do that's incredibly effective, as we've said many times on this show.
Yeah, I will say that if we go another year of mask wearing, I'm buying a Mandalorian mask.
Yeah.
I'm just going to embrace it wholeheartedly at that point. And nope, it's just, this is the way.
Yeah.
I was going to say you had one more on the list, and then I've got a couple that I snuck in there.
I saw those. The last one I mentioned was, or I had in the list was Ponca Wilderness Area. And you can see a theme that I've gone to a lot of wilderness areas, and I'll add on to that after I talk about Ponca. So Ponca Wilderness Area is kind of in the middle of Arkansas. It's north of Little Rock, and it is, I guess, probably best known for the Buffalo National River. It was the first national river in the United States, and it is a gorgeous river. It's so cool because it's like you have this big river that's running through canyons and like there's bluff walls, and so there's a trail that goes around the river in the Ponca Wilderness. And so my buddy and I hiked that trail 3 years ago. Prior to going on the Gros Piton, that trail had the hardest section of trail that I've ever been on, and it was a climb. It was like going upstairs. It's very similar to the Gros Piton, but like very similar to the first section, the easiest section of the Gros Piton. It was a fun trail because you go up and you walk around along the cliffs and you have these gorgeous views. Down below is the river, and my buddy and I did that in 3 days, and it was the first time I'd ever done a multi-night camping trip. And so it kind of was a breakthrough trip for me because I had all these preconceived notions about what would I do for multiple days. And then I really sort of put to practice. You just wear the same clothes. And, as we talked on a few episodes ago, if you have the right things, you can wear the same clothes comfortably and it's okay. It's not a big deal. And so you just wear the same clothes. You have clean clothes for night and you have your hiking clothes for the day, and it's no big deal. And that trip really solidified that sort of way of doing things for me. And that was really cool. One of the other things that I found about that trail that was hard was a section of, it wasn't like a rock garden like I mentioned on the Skyway Loop, but just a section of trail that was just all rocks. They were like rocks the size of large dinner rolls. So they weren't so big that you could just step on it and plant your foot comfortably. But they weren't so small that you could just walk on them. It was really frustrating to walk on this section of the trail because it wasn't like, is that rock going to move when I step on it? It's like every rock moves when you step on it. And you have to just be ready to compensate for every step you take is not going to be a solid step. And you just do that for like a mile and a half.
That seems miserable. It seems almost like walking in sand that's fighting back.
It kind of, yeah, it was like really frustrating. And having hiking poles help, but it's still frustrating. The other thing that was fun about that trip was my friend and I, we did that trip in early to mid October. So it was like nice and cool in the evening, nice and warm during the day. And we were, all 3 days that we were hiking, we were usually the first people going through the trail. It wasn't very busy. And it was full of cobwebs. So you'd walk 5-10 feet and you walk into a spider web. You walk another 5-10 feet and there's a spider web. And that's almost the whole trail except for the parts that opened up. And I remember my friend getting really frustrated about that. And he was like, you take the lead. And I was like, okay. And so I'm walking into a spider web and I'm just like, not saying a thing, and like I'm just keeping my eye on the spiders, and if like it's like on my shoulder, I just like kind of low key flick the spider off of me because I want to pretend like there's no spider webs. And after about 15 minutes, my friend was like, "Have you run into any spider webs?" I was like, "No, man, not a single one." Isn't that weird? He was like, "Yeah," and I lead for another 15 minutes. Any spider webs? I was like, "I think one." But I couldn't quite tell. He was like, "That's weird." He's like, "Let me get in front again." I was like, "Okay." So he gets in front and, he goes, 5 steps and walks into a spider web and he goes, "Oh," and he was like, Then he goes in the second spider web, and he finally was like, I can't believe you didn't have any spider webs. And it's like, nah, man, I had just as many spider webs. I was just fucking with you.
It's such a horrible thing to do.
I know.
It's exactly the kind of thing I would do too, though. So.
Yeah, right. But it's a gorgeous trail. I think one of their most famous attractions there, besides the river, is a spot called Hemden Hollow Falls. When I went, it was too dry, it was too dry, and there was no waterfalls. But it looked like it would be a gorgeous spot to have a waterfall. I want to go back in the spring and actually paddle that river. It's known for some good paddling.
Yeah, at some point I'm going to have to finally break down and come with you and see whether I can actually keep up on a paddling endeavor.
Oh, it has very much to do with the boat that you have and not a lot to do with anything else. But yeah, we should do that. We should definitely do that.
Yeah, I figure worst case scenario, it just gives me yet another hobby.
It's a great hobby to have. It sort of fits in with the other ones. It fits in pretty well.
You said you were also going to expound on the wilderness theme. Do you want to do that before I mention my two?
Yeah, it's real quick. It's just if you go to... I've never been to a national park, so I can't speak to what the rules are to national park. But if you go to a state park, most state parks have... Most, if not all, state parks have front country camping. Front country / RV camping. And, you go, you park, you set up your tent, you set up your RV, whatever you have, and you camp there. And some parks will have backcountry camping, which is nice because it's usually something where you have to hike into it, and you have a more... It's a different experience because there tend to be fewer people there, and you can... I feel like you have a more serene experience because there's no electricity. There's oftentimes no running water. Definitely no running water unless there's a creek of some sort of natural flowing water. There's no man-made water source out there. And I take that back. Sometimes there are water pumps like in the ground. But it's a very different experience than front country camping. And I want to say the statistic is like 95% of camping happens in the front country. And that should, I say that as an idea of like how few people go to the backcountry to camp. The other thing is, I think at best for using the bathroom, you might have a privy, but most of the time you're going to have to dig a cat hole and bury your bathroom waste. So not a lot of state parks that I know of have that. Actually, only one state park that I know of that I've actually, in the area has that, and that's Oak Mountain State Park. And if you want to go camp in the backcountry there, they have 4 sites, and you have to reserve that, and they're designated sites. And if you try to camp anywhere in their backcountry that's not one of those 4 sites, the ranger could kick you out. And there's probably some sort of fine you might pay, or maybe some jail time. I don't know. But, there's an infraction for that. In a wilderness area, they will often have designated campsites, and that's where you can build a fire. But for the most part, you can camp anywhere. Leave no trace is always highly encouraged, and that's the same for the front country. And to be fair, we should be doing that like on the roads in the neighborhoods. It's don't trash it up. But the wilderness areas tend to have a lot more flexibility for areas that you can camp, and it's all backcountry. And I think even the Sipsey wilderness, there are requirements about the tools that are used for trail maintenance. I know in the Sipsey wilderness, and I don't know if this is the case for all wildernesses, but in the Sipsey wilderness, you're not allowed to use a motorized tool for trail maintenance. So when you want to clear a tree from the trail, it's with a handsaw. You can't use a chainsaw.
Makes sense. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure what the difference might be between a wilderness area and a refuge from that standpoint, or if they'd be more or less synonymous.
I think a refuge is maybe more strict.
It would seem like it, just from the terminology in general, but it may even be that you're not supposed to actually stay in a refuge area. But it seems like I've heard of people camping in those areas as well. So I'm not sure. It's one of those things that I don't necessarily have a desire to hike into a wildlife refuge and strike camp anyway. But it is interesting to note that there is another term used for some areas, and it would be, I guess, worth exploring what the differences are between the two.
Yeah, I did a quick search, and the U.S. Department of the Interior has a page on their website called America's Public Lands Explained, and it explains the difference between national parks, national forests, national wildlife refuges, national conservation areas, national monuments, wildernesses, national historic sites, national memorials, national battlefields, national recreation areas, wild and scenic rivers, national seashores and national lake shores, national trails. And so if you want to really dig into what the U.S. Department of the Interior has a page in their blog that explains public lands.
Good to know. I may look that up and probably won't, but it's good to know that it's out there.
I'll throw it in our notes, and you can click the link if you so choose. But I'm going to go ahead and say that is follow up for that. There's no need to follow up further on wildernesses and so forth.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think there's really a need to follow that train of thought either. It was more just kind of side thought that that would be interesting to explore.
So tell me about Scotland.
Yeah, I added these two not because they were difficult or multi-day or anything else. It's more that they were unique and interesting and things that I would absolutely want to do again. So last year, the end of August, 1st of September, we made a trip over into England, from England to Scotland, Scotland to Ireland, Ireland back to England. And over the course of that trip, we hiked Arthur's Seat, which is right outside of Edinburgh, and spent some time hiking along the cliffs of Moher in Ireland. And neither of them were difficult hikes. The only reason that Arthur's Seat was even remotely difficult was related to things I've shared in the past, the whole 35 pounds of camera gear on my back, and first time wearing zero drop shoes on a hike, and that kind of thing. All self-inflicted wounds, so to speak. But the hike was great. It was easily a day hike, if you could even count it as a day hike. I think it took us an hour to go from base to summit, and then maybe 30 minutes to get back down, and a lot of that was just taking the time to kind of enjoy the scenery and take pictures and everything else. But what was novel about it was that you're right in the middle of Edinburgh, and you walk down, in this case, we walked down the Royal Mile toward the, I don't remember the name of the castle, it's the Queen's residence there, and right outside of that, you have Arthur's Seat, and that park. Holyrood Palace was the name of the palace, and so you have Holyrood Park. And the most difficult part of the hike was actually at the summit, and it was only because of how strong the wind was blowing. Like you could lean into it and it would support you. And so if you took a kind of side path around the summit that was very narrow, it would be easy to see a gust of wind knocking you off, and that being the end of, well, everything. But it was just a great hike in general, just to be able to do something like that again, because it's the first time that we had really gone on any kind of hike since Jacob was born, since we didn't have him, with us for the trip. And then similarly at the Cliffs of Moher, it was more just that the views were great. So it was all flat hike kind of at the top of the cliffs. We didn't do, I assume there are pathways that take you down certain sections and all, but we stayed up top and just kind of hiked along the ridge line and enjoyed the views. And similarly, a lot of strong wind, but it was just a great experience, something that I have not experienced anything like it here, and just wanted to call that out.
I remember when you came back from Scotland and you told me about the climb to Arthur's Seat and the wind, and I was just like, that's I have never experienced wind like that before. I think even like when there's been a tornado around, I'm inside, and any type of like strong winds or straight line winds, I'm in the bathroom or in the basement taking cover. And so I think it would be really cool to sort of lean into the wind. Was there ever a point with that wind that you felt like it was unsafe?
Not really. So there was a section toward the summit where we started to go along one path and realized how narrow it was and felt that wasn't a wise decision with the wind being the way it was. And so we doubled back and took the longer but more normal path the rest of the way up the summit. So you could say that it influenced our decisions on how to reach the top, but I think we probably would have made that decision even without the wind, just because of the way the path was on that particular section. I will say it's the first time that I've seen the wind knock somebody over, which I saw a couple of times. And then, of course, Emily also was knocked over once as a result of the wind, and actually had a little bit of an issue with her ankle for part of the day.
Oof.
But all in all, it was great. It was a lot of fun. I actually have a couple of recordings of us sitting at the historic marker at the top with the wind just raging in the microphone, because it was just different. It's not something I had experienced previously.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that. Is it typical to have wind like that?
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
I know, looking up just some general information, there have been a number of reports of people being knocked over and falling. How much of that was because they were in an area that isn't technically marked as where you were supposed to be, and that's maybe not the best description, because none of it is marked overly well. It seems like whoever you talk to tells you a slightly different path to go up. But there is a section to ascend and descend that might as well just be classified as stairs without any type of railing or anything else that you would hold on to. So it's almost like scaling the side of a cliff, but not quite that steep. So I would say it's probably a 60-ish degree angle. So steep for sure.
Yeah.
And the steps are not like steps. There are a couple of sections where steps are actually kind of carved out, but for the most part, it's just rock. And so there are some people that take that path up, and I can certainly see why on a windy day that may not be the best choice.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I have a friend in Colorado, and he had posted some pictures of kind of doing that exact thing, just doing a scramble up the side of a rock face like that. So it's like you don't need, like, you're not climbing, but you're climbing. It's certainly
it's kind of
a different kind of yeah. Like, you could do it. You just you can stand up. You just are a little bit more careful because of if you slip, you're gonna slip and fall and slide, and that's not gonna be a fun sliding experience.
Yeah, you're gonna bounce around a little bit, and that may or may not take you significantly further down, depending on how you bounce. Yeah,
it's one of those 2 steps forwards, 1 misstep, and you're at the bottom.
Yeah, definitely. And then what's interesting is that apparently there are plenty of people who decide they will run that at night.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure that's mostly locals, but to each their own. But I would guess that that's more where the accidents come from than people who are visiting. But all of that's anecdotal.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to run it at night, that's likely where you're going to have the most accidents.
And also, in general, like according to locals, or according to a couple of locals, we watched a couple of YouTube channels on the hike before we went, just to kind of get an idea of what to expect and what we might want to pack. But typically speaking, they call it a 30 to 45 minute hike from base to summit. So for us to take an hour doesn't sound like it's that different. Especially since we took a lot of time to stop and take pictures and just enjoy views, with it being the only time that we were going to be there. But not the kind of thing that is a strenuous, multi-mile activity at all by any means.
Yeah. Still, I saw the pictures. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to be there and be able to go just spend time at the top on a weekly or daily basis, depending on my mood. It's one of the few places that I would gladly go back and hike repeatedly just because of how nice it was.
Yeah. I know some places like that too. Was there any more about the Cliffs of Moher?
Not really. I know that there are a lot of paths, or overall there's a significant distance you could hike. We didn't do a large part of it because it was kind of rainy and windy when we went, and we wanted to just enjoy the predominantly accessible views and sections, and we still had a decent amount to explore in Ireland with our limited time there. So we probably spent, 2.5, 3 hours at the cliffs, and from there went further into Clare County.
I remember you had a time lapse video with the clouds coming in and so forth, and was that the Cliffs of Moher?
No, that was at so we found a Airbnb that we rented that was basically just a little cottage. The owner of some property built two, and so you could think of it as just a little stone brick, villa, cottage, whichever term you want to use. But it was single bedroom, single bathroom, and then kind of a combined living room, dining room. But right outside of that cottage was the view that you saw. And so it was a view of the Atlantic overlooking the stretch of the coastline that's known as the Wild Atlantic Way. And it was gorgeous. I mean, I would not want to stay anywhere else unless I knew it was going to be that enjoyable. But the coastline there, even though there were a number of places where I have video and pictures of cliffs, it's just minuscule in comparison to the Cliffs of Moher.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you mentioned that it was just, it's cold and windy, and I was just like, I had thought about that time-lapse video, and I was just like, it would be so lovely just to sit inside and drink a hot drink, like a cappuccino or a hot chocolate or something, and just look out at the ocean. I mean, and be all nice and cozy inside and know how cold outside it is. I think that'd be lovely.
Yeah, while we were there, it wasn't too horribly cold. It was just cool enough that you didn't really want to stay outside if you could help it. But we kind of intentionally planned our trip in a way where when we arrived in Ireland, we got a rental vehicle and then just kind of took a meandering road trip from Dublin out to the western coastline. And then the next morning got up and explored the Cliffs of Moher. But because of the way we planned things out, it was very intentional that the latter half of that day was set aside just to relax and enjoy the views and not feel like we had to go anywhere or do anything. And so we kind of did exactly that, except it was, instead of hot beverages, it was alcoholic beverages.
Nice.
Which I'm sure if we had had access to, a full kitchen, coffee maker, or well, there was a coffee maker, but, you know, if we had had access to everything we had here, we probably would have done, you know, a couple of the espresso-based beverages first and then migrated into beer and wine instead of starting with beer and wine. But yeah, definitely a place I want to go back to, and I would be happy just spending my time there. I don't have to go see anything. Just give me that little cottage, and I'm good.
Yeah, a little cottage, gorgeous view, a delicious beverage, unbeatable. Maybe a fire.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing we were missing that would have topped it off. Would be if there was any kind of fire pit or fireplace facility, but you know, at the time we didn't miss it. The views were that enjoyable. Everything was comfortable. There was no TV or anything. It was just enjoying looking out over the coastline.
I totally understand. So I added another section right after this, and I think it'll be a pretty fast section, and those are some future locations, like places I want to go, places I want to hike. I sort of made this a top 5, I think. I know there's plenty more places I'd love to visit, but I tried to narrow it down like to the top 5 I'd want to go to. And I'm kind of surprised that all but one are in the United States.
I don't know. I'm not so sure I would find that surprising given the just diversity of terrain and features that are at our disposal.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, when I look at it, I was like, oh, wow, all 5 of those are in the United States. But then, you know, you talk to folks, the United States, like, has a lot of different features. And there's a lot going on here in the middle of North America. And so, yeah, it actually, if you think about it in terms of, like you said, the diversity of the country, yeah, it's not surprising. And then on top of that, it's kind of not surprising that so many Europeans visit the United States or talk about visiting the United States, because there's so much diversity in the country. But the first one I have on my list is not in the United States. It's the only one that's abroad, and it's the Abel Tasman National Park. I think most people that are adventurous and are interested in sort of ecotourism want to go to New Zealand. It's a gorgeous country. And I'm pretty sure 20 years ago when, I guess it's 19 years ago, when The Lord of the Rings was just popping up in the cinema, people started looking and was like, oh yeah, New Zealand is where I need to go. New Zealand's where I need to go. I think that brought the countryside of New Zealand into the mainstream. And so, excuse me. And so, maybe a year or two ago, I came across a video of the Abel Tasman National Park in New Zealand. It's on the South Island, but in the north. So, it's this national park that they have that really lends itself to hiking and paddling. They have excursions that you can do out there that include both of those activities, and you can go across the park and sort of experience a temperate rainforest and hike through and paddle in the area, and it's just kind of gorgeous. I'd highly recommend looking at pictures of the Abel Tasman. Oh, I take that back. There was a second place that was not in the United States, and that's Banff National Park. And that's kind of the place I want to go for sort of like a northern experience up north. It's in Alberta, Canada. And I haven't, it's like one of those things where I was like, do I want to go in the winter or do I want to go in the summer? And it's both. The first picture I ever saw of it was somebody in a kayak paddling up to an alpine island in the middle of an alpine lake. And I thought, oh, that would be a cool spot to camp. And so ever since then, everything I've come across about Banff National Park has made me want to go there, and just looking at winter and spring, summer, like all the seasons, like it's kind of like one of those places where it's like it's got something different to offer every season, and I want to experience it in all the different seasons.
So what part of Canada?
It's Alberta, Canada. It's in their Rockies. So you've got British Columbia on the west coast, and just the province just east of British Columbia is Alberta.
And didn't catch if you mentioned it at first, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I did not. I think I said Alberta, but if you don't know Canadian geography, then it's not helpful that I said Alberta. I know Alberta because in elementary school I did a report. I had to do a report on Alberta, Canada, so I still remember that. I was also really good at geography. Another spot, and this will be the first spot in the United States, is I feel like I'm going to butcher the name, but it's the Kalala Trail.
I don't have any guesses on pronunciation.
I just want to apologize to Hawaiians and all Pacific Islanders for my butchering of the language. I do apologize. It is a trail. It's an 11-mile trail that's on the coast of the Nepali coast on the island of Kauai, I think is how it's pronounced. Again, I could be wrong, and my apologies. And that is an island that's east of Oahu. I think that's correct. I think Oahu is the island with Honolulu, and Kauai is an island, west of that, west. So I saw somebody I follow on YouTube hiked in that trail, and it's gorgeous. It kind of reminded me of St. Lucia, but at the end of this, it's an 11-mile trail. It's something like 6,000 feet of elevation change across those 11 miles. Not terrible, but it's like up and down. And at the end, this guy and his wife found a little spot that was sort of like secluded and got to camp there. And there was like a beach where there was nobody. Like the beach was all to themselves. There's a little cave or grotto where they could walk in, and there's like a little beach area inside of that cave, and it was like sort of this ideal Hawaii experience that sort of something you can have this private moment, because it's a difficult 11-mile hike to get to. So I think they did not hike out. They actually had somebody pick them up, and they went out on a boat. So I thought that was kind of clever. So that looked like a lot of fun. And I've wanted to go to Hawaii for as long as I can remember. Actually, even over the summer, I rewatched the show Lost just because I wanted to see like videos of Hawaii, because like all of that was filmed on Oahu.
Yeah, I know. In general, I've looked at just what it would take to travel to Hawaii, and what has always kind of been the thing, I guess, that has stopped me is that it's more expensive for us to go to Hawaii from here than it is to head down into the Caribbean. Or
yeah.
At least historically it has been. I don't know how much that may change over the next couple of years, but and so I've always just kind of defaulted to looking at Caribbean locations.
I totally understand, but it's a place where it's like at some point I know there are less expensive locations to travel to, but I was like, I do want to go there. It's one of the ones I'm like, I'm going to be okay, or I've just decided that like it's going to cost more, but I want to. So The other one, the next one is Yosemite. Like, I want to see Yosemite Valley. I feel like that's probably one of the most breathtaking parts of the United States. I really want to go when there are fewer people. So it might be something I do in the winter. I know it snows there a lot. I think it'd be gorgeous in the snow, but I'd like to, I don't know, I'd like to see it when it's not snowing. But it's kind of cool because it's the Pacific Crest Trail runs right through Yosemite Valley. Or no, not the valley, but it runs through Yosemite National Park. And I think that's pretty cool. You can hike through Yosemite, and I think there's a limit on the number of nights that you can stay in the park area. Like, you have to leave and spend another night, like, after you've met your quota and before you can come back in and spend the night in the park, at least legally.
When I saw Yosemite on the list, it made me remember that we did not have the same experiences going out to California with the training for working for Apple.
Yeah.
Because we actually, over the course of the training, we took a day. It was a Friday that we drove up and stayed in a hotel right outside of Yosemite so that Saturday morning we could drive into the park and drive around and enjoy what we could over the course of the day before driving back to our paid-for accommodations for work. And then the next day we drove into San Francisco. But that most of a day at Yosemite was phenomenal. Like, there's no other way to describe it.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like I wasted my time in California as far as like the free time. I was living in New York and I hadn't been to the beach in a while, so I just went to the beach a bunch. I went to Santa Cruz a lot, and that was great. But I definitely missed out on going to Yosemite. I remember somebody saying that they were going to go to Yosemite, and like they drove out there. It's like 3 hours drive, something like that. And they drove out there on a Friday after training, so that they could have all day Saturday and Sunday there. So I do feel like I really missed out on that, because I was so close. And I just took it for granted. And I even knew like how beautiful Yosemite was. I just forgot about it. I remember there's a gorgeous painting called "Looking Down Yosemite Valley," and that painting exists in the Birmingham Museum of Art owns that painting. And I didn't really know anything about Yosemite National Park until I was in my late teens, and I saw that painting in the museum here. And it's a large painting, and it's sort of significant because it's the first large painting of the West that made it to the East Coast. I think prior to this painting being shown on the East Coast, people had only seen like small photographs, and I think the painting itself is something like a little over 5 feet by 8.5 feet, almost 9 feet. Actually, no, larger than 9 feet, I think. And so it's like it's massive, and it's just so well lit. And I remember seeing that and being struck by it and thinking, wow, that's amazing. And I'd always loved it. And I always loved the painting, and I just somehow didn't put together that like I could actually go to that spot and see what's in the painting. And it's kind of an odd painting, because the way Yosemite Valley is depicted now in photographs, it's a reverse. It's like the other side of Yosemite Valley. So you don't see El Capitan in this painting No, I'm wrong. You can see El Capitan. So
yeah, I don't recall the painting off the top of my head, but that's one I may have to look up and compare to some of the photos that I took while I was there. Because I know I remember kicking myself for not taking my camera on the trip and relying on the phone. But it was because I didn't think about going into Yosemite. I was thinking about, I don't care so much about taking the camera for pictures of Cupertino or San Jose or even San Francisco. Like, even though there were plenty of things that I could take pictures of there, it didn't feel like I was going to be missing out. And then I had the opportunity to go into Yosemite, and it's like, I really wish I had my camera after all.
Yeah. I dropped a link into our notes if you want to see that painting.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Yeah, I don't have any photos with that view. I think I have the other side of that potentially.
Yeah. So I think it's like the sort of the iconic view that you normally see of Yosemite Valley. In the right side of the picture, there's usually a waterfall. I'm assuming it's a fairly famous waterfall, but El Capitan is on the left, and in the distance, usually sort of offset from the center, is Half Dome, and in the looking down Yosemite Valley painting, Half Dome is right there on the right, and El Capitan is a little bit. It's not. I feel like it's not quite the focus like it is in, or it's not featured like it is in modern paintings. Yeah,
it's definitely a different view, but it is a view that I recognize for sure, even though I know I haven't looked at it from that angle. That's going to make me probably go back and look at the photos and see how close I ever was to that particular spot. But I think everything that we had was looking more directly at El Capitan.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we ever made our way over that far to that side.
Yeah, it's definitely not the picture you're used to seeing of Yosemite Valley, and it's just sort of like I kind of wonder. I feel like the focus of that picture is Sentinel Rock, and I think now when people take pictures in Yosemite Valley, they focus on El Capitan. So anyway, regardless, it's a place I want to visit. I'd like to hike through there and see all of the views of the valley.
Yeah, it's a place I would love to get back to and actually be able to spend more than a part of a day there.
Mm-hmm.
I know we touched on a lot of highlights while we were there, but it would be great just to be able to spend 3-4 days exploring instead of trying to cram as much as we could into a kind of drive through the park.
The last place I had on there, it's kind of a cheating one. It's Canyonlands National Park / Arches National Park. Those are both in Utah. They're both next to each other. It's just kind of one of those places where I think you hike through the whole thing and everywhere you look is like, this is cool. And I think a lot of it is it's just so different than where we are now. Like where we are now, we have so much green and there it's like these beautiful orange rock formations, and I think that's just because it's not what I'm used to. I feel like, ooh, this will be fun. It's different than what I'm used to. Whereas I think when folks come here from out west, it's like, wow, it is so, the green just sort of pops. Probably like how, like when we, when you went to Ireland, you go there and the green just like pops.
Yeah, it's, I know we kind of touched on that previously, being used to this area always being green in some fashion. And it's a dull kind of pale green compared to what Ireland was like at the end of August, 1st of September.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it's that way year round, of course, but it just was so rich and vibrant, it took me aback.
Yeah. Well, I feel like even like when I've gone out west, I was like, when you do see green out there, it's more muted than the green is here.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But those are the places that I picked for my top 5 for right now.
Yeah, I thought about trying to create a list, but I realized that I've been out of the kind of hiking and outdoor activity game long enough that I really don't have a list. It's more, I just want to get back out and do any of it again, and then kind of figure out where I am and where I would like to go from there.
Well, I was going to say I dropped a little bullet point that said activated charcoal.
I saw that. I was about to ask.
Yeah, I was like, I kind of wanted it to be like, what the hell is that about? And it's I've decided that activated charcoal capsules are something that I will take on every hike I go on. Reason being is that if you ever get sick with like food poisoning or you drink the water because you have to, because like I know some folks that have been hiking and they couldn't filter water and they had to, like, it was more important to drink and risk getting sick from what's in the water than not. Or you get Montezuma's revenge. Activated charcoal is a good thing to have on hand. So you take a couple of capsules and the activated charcoal will start to absorb the toxins that the bacteria release in your gut, and that will basically helps with the symptoms. So that the time that it takes for that to pass, you will be relatively symptom free in about half an hour after taking the capsules. So I wanted to look up the thing that really amazed me. I wanted to look up like how much surface area activated charcoal had, and somehow in my head I got to thinking like 1 gram of activated charcoal had the same amount of surface area as 2 tennis courts, but I was very, very wrong. 1 gram of activated charcoal has the surface area of 1,000 square meters, which is about I did the math. I had the math, and I misplaced the math. It's about 5 tennis courts.
It's still rather large.
Well, yeah. It was larger than I actually thought. Instead of 2, it's like 5 tennis courts. So that's how there's just so much surface area it's able to absorb all the toxins that the bacteria are releasing. So I have since decided that I always want to have some activated charcoal capsules in my first aid kit while hiking and camping.
It makes sense, and it's good to know. It's not something that I think I've run across anybody point out or talk about. Granted, it's also the kind of thing that I haven't really looked up. Just, again, lack of that type of activity in so long.
I happened to be just talking to a friend, and he would like keep the powder form versions of it. I don't know if they had capsules, or I don't know if he just didn't. I don't know. He had a powder form of it, and he had it on hand for just that kind of occasion. And he was like, you take a spoonful of it and put it with some water and make a slurry, and just it's terrible, but you gulp it down and then let it do its thing.
Well, I think at that point, terrible is kind of relative.
Oh, I'd rather have that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd rather have that terrible slurry than deal with like food poisoning.
Yeah, definitely. So I had a topic that I've now moved to the next episode because I feel like we're reaching kind of the target point for what we generally talk about before we have an after show. And I think the after show might be still somewhat long. So was there anything else that we wanted to kind of mention or tie in to wrap up this episode, or do you feel like that covers everything that you had in mind?
That covers everything I had in mind.
All right. I think that's a wrap on the main show.
Yeah.
And we'll pause for a second and then have the after show. As always, you can reach us on Twitter at untitled_hosts with an S. We also have an Instagram account with the same name at untitled_hosts. You can send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com, and you can visit the feed directly at theuntitledpodcast.com. Have a good night.
Okay, you got to tell me Jacob's infatuation with Christmas songs, because my children got angry at me the last time I tried to play a Christmas song. I don't listen to a lot of Christmas music, but I had I think it's Alone for Christmas in my head, and I wanted to hear that. And I said, my kids asked me, will you play some music? And I was like, sure. And they heard the jingles, and they're like, no Christmas music. And I was like, whoa.
So I think it's because they're doing a Christmas program, and from what I've gathered, they're doing Rocking Around the Christmas Tree and the 12 Days of Christmas. And I don't know what it is about practicing that or exactly how it came about, but about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, we set up a quick little playlist to be able to play, and thought, we'll probably play it while we decorate and put up the tree. I guess that's about 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Time is more or less like non-existent. So either way, when we put up the tree, we put together this little playlist and figured we'd have some Christmas music playing and just go from there. And one of the first songs that played was Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. And Jacob launched into singing along with it and doing the actions that they're doing for the Christmas program at the daycare. And pretty much every day after we get home, he'll want to watch something, and then there'll be a pause, and then he'll ask me if I'll put on Christmas music. And he gets so ridiculously excited about it that it's like, I have no problems putting on Christmas music. Like he jumps around and dances and just he gets hyper just from listening to the music. And it doesn't even matter really what songs it is, as long as it's obviously Christmas music. And he certainly has his preferences, but pretty much any of them will do. It doesn't matter. And he can identify, just from the opening jingles, he can identify probably 75% of the songs. And he doesn't have that kind of recognition of music in general when it's not Christmas music.
That is the cutest thing. I don't know that my ever kids were like that.
I actually took a couple of streams of video from a couple of the cameras that I have where he was singing along to Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. And it was funny because Emily was getting dinner ready, and I was up and down a little bit, but it's like he would be very animated with it and singing it pretty loud, and then just kind of halfway subdue it when we were cutting close to looking and watching. And like if he noticed we were paying attention, he would kind of he wouldn't stop, but it wasn't as pronounced as he was doing. And so we're kind of curious whether he's going to have stage fright when they do the program, even though there's not going to be a live audience. They're just going to stream it over Facebook.
That's good though. That's responsible.
Yeah, I'm certainly glad they're doing it that way, but it does change changes everything about it. Like at that point, it's just, we're just going to practice the program, and there just happens to be somebody else in here with a phone.
Yeah. I feel like that would have been. I feel like at least I feel like both of my kids would have done better with that at that age. So, by the time Luke was 5, he was okay. Like he could do programs, but like when he was like 2-3 years old, he was like painfully shy. Like it was the cutest little thing, but
yeah, this is the first year he seems to even have an interest in it. I know they've done programs previous years, and we've never heard him talk about it or seen any indication of him paying attention to it. And like if you watch his interactions, he'll mostly just kind of stand there and stare. And so we're interested to see if this is actually a yes, I want to participate and be animated about it, or not by the time gets here. But yeah, it's interesting because I just haven't seen him that animated and fascinated by music prior to this. And I hope it continues and happens again later at some point, but just watching it has made this particular Christmas cycle be that much more enjoyable just because of how enthusiastic he is about it.
During the times of the year that it's not the holidays, what kind of music is he exposed to?
I don't know if there's anything specific. If I randomly choose something to play like during dinner, it tends to be classical or instrumental, just so that it's easy listening in the background. In the vehicle, it's whatever I happen to play, so it can be anything goes really there. Like I have to be careful that I actually pay attention to the music for a change, so that if it's something that I know the lyrics are not something I'm prepared to explain or deal with, I change it pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
But most of the time, I would say it airs toward probably either blues or what at this point we would call classic rock, even though it sounds horrible to refer to stuff that I grew up on as classic rock.
It was classic rock when we were teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, or rather, when I hear classic rock, I think of the stuff that came out of the 70s. Not what we were listening to that was current music in the 90s. But I guess, like...
Yeah, I think most of what I'm thinking of was probably 80s and 90s rock in general.
Okay. So I have discovered a thing with my kids and music, and that is that they love electronica music, which sort of warms my heart because when I was a teenager, I could not find enough good electronica music. And I just was like playing some and they just love it. And I was like, oh my gosh, they love it like I loved it. And so now I'm just like, whenever I hear something new that I think they'll like, I find it for them. I add it to this playlist that I made for them. That's a bunch of electronic music, and they can't get enough. They're always asking me to listen to this. So, it's kind of a cool thing to see.
I might have to try that. I've tended to err more toward stuff that I was exposed to, which I would assume that's fairly normal. But like growing up, my dad would often play Chicago and Clapton and things along those veins where you could think of it as more easy to listen to, could get kind of blurred into the background if you weren't really paying attention. But then when you did appreciate it and did pay attention, there was a lot there to really focus on and listen to. Eagles, the general normal stuff you would expect.
I didn't have...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I didn't have a normal upbringing with that regard. My dad was from a foreign country, so like that's not music that he listened to at all. Like he didn't have any exposure to that. It wasn't his preference, and my mom didn't really care either. My mom liked the Beatles and some other music in that vein, but she just there wasn't neither of my parents were like really into music in that regard. So all the music I grew up with, I had to discover on my own.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, it's one of those things I never really took a step back and thought about why I classify it as normal, but it's only normal because it's what I was exposed to.
No, I think for most people our age, like that was the norm. I just happened to not have the normal upbringing that most people, or the normal exposure that most people had.
Could be accurate. I know, at least among my general social circles, everybody seemed to at least be familiar with the same types of music, even though we were all kind of exploring our own thing by the time we were talking about it and understood enough to really have those conversations. But it is interesting that that what I think of as the normal cycle or normal exposure may not actually be that normal or indicative of anything other than my immediate social circle at the time as well.
No, I mean my social circles are the same. They're similar to yours. I mean, we didn't live that far. We lived in the next state over, so it's probably fairly common. But I think among people our age, with parents our age, that was, I think, what typically happened. It was really interesting to me because, like, I discovered what we would have called classic rock in the 90s and the early 2000s, being music, like rock music from this, from the 70s, like Aerosmith and some AC/DC and Ted Nugent. And I discovered that by watching the movie Dazed and Confused. Like in the early 2000s, I rented that from the Blockbuster, and I watched that, and I was like, I love this music. And so like I got the soundtrack because I really like that music. And I think I would have really loved jam bands, because there's a scene in Forrest Gump where Jenny is standing on the railing and she's contemplating suicide, and the music that's playing in the background is the second half of Freebird. So it's the part where they're jamming and there's no lyrics. And I just remember hearing that for the first time. I thought, this is awesome. Like I need more of this kind of music. And I remember, I think it took me 4 years to find that song, which, you hear me say that and you're like, that's crazy. But like, I didn't have any resources. Like I remember trying to look it up on the internet and I just couldn't find it because I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know, I didn't have any lyrics. I remember hearing that song in another TV show and I was like, I think that's a song. And somehow I couldn't place it because the first half of the song is very different from the second half. And I finally figured it out in 2005 when I was at went and saw a friend's band play, and the band that played before him was a cover band, and they're playing Freebird, and then all of a sudden I hear them start to jam, and I was like, oh, this song. And I looked at my friend, I was like, Brad, what is this song? I was like, I've been trying to figure out this song for 4 years. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he goes, it's Freebird. And I was like, I understand why you're looking at me that way, but I have been trying to figure out what this song is for 4 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, growing up, I know if it wasn't something that you could hear on the radio, or that you at least had a friend who heard it on the radio, like you're pretty much out of luck if you didn't have either a title or an artist or something where you could try to kind of narrow down what it was that you heard.
Yeah, I mean, I bought it's not on the soundtrack to Forrest Gump. I bought the soundtrack to Forrest, which is a great soundtrack, but I bought it for the song, and it's not on there. And there's just so many songs in that movie that I never like. It's listed in the credits. I just couldn't put it together. And whenever I saw Freebird and Lynyrd Skynyrd, I had this mindset of I know what that is, and it's not that, because this is a cool jamming song. Lynyrd Skynyrd's like Southern, Sweet Home Alabama. That's what I had in my head. So I totally was prejudiced towards it. So like I understand my, like I can look back and see what my own prejudices were as to why I never thought that it was Lynyrd Skynyrd. And it's just like, I live in Alabama, and it's like this is a song at every single concert. Somebody either yells Freebird because they really mean that they want the band to play Freebird, or they yell it as a joke. So, I mean, that's kind of what's funny about it.
Yeah. Thinking about it, I actually am not sure I've ever been in a concert where somebody hasn't called for either Freebird or Sweet Home Alabama.
Exactly.
So I added another note here, and I don't have much to say on it, so it'll be short. It was just the state of the Premier League. And it came to mind because, I don't know if you noticed, Manchester City had a draw against West Brom today.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, and over the weekend, we drew with Fulham, and Tottenham drew with whoever they played. I don't even remember who it was. But it was just one of those things where for some reason or another, it triggered the thought in my mind that, wow, this is a really strange season.
This is not
and that was it. Like, it's not even that there's anything to go into. It's just, this is a strange run of games.
Oh, it's worse. It's so bad. Like, our Arsenal's just, our last 5 games are loss, draw, loss. We lost to Burnley on Sunday. Our last win was against United, and that was a while ago. It was a penalty kick.
Yeah, I seem to recall seeing a headline that was talking about it. I didn't pay a lot of attention because all of the headlines have been kind of sensationalized over the past month-ish anyway. And I keep seeing notes about Liverpool imploding and everything else. And I mean, no, everybody's struggling. Like, why are you trying to call out any team as being overly different? And I that's overly generalizing it. I know some are having more struggles than others, but it was just a very stark reminder of this is a very abnormal season, and I have no clue how it's going to go.
Yeah, I feel bad for Sheffield United. They have 0 wins. They have 11 losses.
Who is right above them? They only have
West Brom.
1, right?
West Brom has the 1 win.
Yeah. I knew it was close. It sounds horrible. What was strange about it is I knew West Brom had either 1 or 2, and so it was just strange that they were able to hold City to a draw today.
Teams that I had never thought I'd see ranked higher than Arsenal 12 matches in would be Leeds, Newcastle, Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Wolves, West Ham, Southampton, which is in 4th. Like, of all the people that are like not struggling, Southampton is like in the place that like surprises me more than anyone else.
You know, like I agree in general, but at the same time, we've poached Southampton for players fairly regularly as well. So I think that's why it doesn't strike me as odd. That, and I obviously also have not followed the Premier League as long as you have either. So I don't have the same view of or the established view of where a lot of teams typically fall. But I know that like Van Dijk came from Southampton, for example, and with how influential and phenomenal he was for our defensive line, just thinking about the ability for Southampton to recruit that type of talent, even though it was poached fairly quickly. I don't know. I guess it just doesn't surprise me as much as some of the others could. Like I'm more surprised by Crystal Palace and West Ham.
Yeah, I can see that. I was just thinking. I mean, historically, Southampton has been on the second half of the table. They weren't even in the Premier League last season. No, I take that back. They were 11. They finished 11th last season. Which kind of had a weird ending. But like in the regular in 18-19, they finished in 16th. 17-18, they finished in 17th. Season prior to that, they finished 8th. But like I feel like they're not a team that I usually see on the top half of the table.
Yeah, I guess I just haven't paid that much attention in general, just because they're not a team that I really follow the results of.
Yeah, in the past decade, they haven't been a team that's in and out. Like, there's some teams that like they'll pop in and they'll pop into the Premier League and then they'll get relegated and they'll pop back in and they'll get relegated. So they haven't been inconsistent like that. But I normally think of them as a bottom half of the table team.
Yeah, I could see that. I think the main reason I just don't notice it as much is because of the players that we've pulled from there. And then I really don't look at the overall table that often. I look at, the places of 4 or 5 teams, and that's about it. But yeah, I didn't have a lot to add. It was just, it struck me as odd after today's match. And then we play Tottenham tomorrow, which should be interesting.
I think that'll be a good one.
I hope so. I hope we win.
Yeah, I just don't like seeing Tottenham at the top of the table. So yeah, I'm for the Reds in that match.
Hopefully, I'll be able to watch it. We'll see. That's a whole other rant that I don't want to get into yet again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good place to call it.
Yeah. All right, man.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.